Hi, everyone. So while we're waiting for a couple more folks to join us, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I'm sitting next to the choreographer and artistic director of Decidedly Jazz Dance Works, Kimberly Cooper. So let's start with jazz and Calgary.
I know, right?
Yeah, you're right. So, I didn't know about you for a long time, and so I'm assuming that some other folks in this room maybe weren't as familiar with the company as well. So, give us a brief history of DJD.
Well, DJD was formed in 1984 it came out of the University Dance Department. It was founded by Vicki Adams Willis, Hannah Stillwell, and Michelle Moss. She founded the jazz program at the university. She went on sabbatical. She came home, and in a weak moment, hi, Sabby, have a seat.
Right here.
In a weak moment, she agreed to start a dance company with Hannah Stillwell and Michelle Moss, who didn't want to get jobs being waitresses. That's the story. That's the folklore. DJD started with 4 dancers as a summer project, and it's almost 40 years later, and we made it so far. You know, you can never know. That's the short answer.
So, before you were Kimberly Cooper, artistic director of DJD, you were also Kimberly Cooper, dancer in DJD, and I'm just wondering, what was it about the company? You've told me, you saw them when you were fairly young, and you were like, that's it. What was it about what you saw?
I danced from when I was little, as lots of people do. Apparently, when I was little, I knew I wanted to be a dancer, but I saw the first DJD show when I was 13, and I was like, I fell in love like only a 13-year-old girl can. And it worked out somehow. I started taking classes when they offered community classes. This was a very small grassroots part-time, then more full-time. I was thinking about, I taught the TAP students today, and we were talking about funding in Canada. And I think it was in 1988, DJD applied for a Canada Jobs Strategy grant that was supposed to go to trades, but somehow they convinced the government that dance was like a trade. So that was the first grant the company ever got, and I think that was my first paycheck came out of that. So yes, I danced in the company from when I was 18. After 11 years, I think, I became resident choreographer and artistic associate, and then I've been artistic director for 10 years. I'm so lucky. I'm having a blessed dance career. It's amazing.
And yes, so thanks for that. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to also speak about what some of us in the house lovingly call the Jazz Palace, which is this amazing multi-floor building with a theater and several studios entirely devoted to jazz dance, which there is nothing like that in this country. Nothing like that exists. Can you talk about that building?
Sure. So DJD has had 3 homes. One was this upstairs space above a bakery, and we used to get in trouble when we were tap dancing or flamenco dancing. We would make the bread fall, and the baker would come up and say, "Stop dancing." And then we moved to a place that seemed like a mansion. It was a studio that we kind of built that had 3 spaces, and it was great, except for they kept doubling our rent every few years. And Kathy Sundstrom, our executive director and master fundraiser, happens to be here tonight. And Kathy, yes, Kathy. Kathy has this kind of wild power to convince people to give us money. And after 11 years of convincing people to give us money and 1 million meetings with architects, we built this jazz palace that is 7 studios, a studio theater. It's beautiful. It's right downtown Calgary. Please come visit us if you're ever there. It's 2016 we opened, so it feels like it's a new time.
Incredible. So we have been joined by a couple of folks here, and since you have a mic in your lap, I'd love for you to introduce yourself.
Okay, hello. My name is Sabrina Komanescu, and I'm a dancer with Decidedly Jazz Dance Works.
And how many years have you been with DJD?
This is my 8th season.
My name is Ruben D. Toledo, and I'm the musical director for DJD for this show.
So I think probably a lot of folks have heard jazz music, seen some jazz musicians, and maybe seen some jazz dancing, but I think the thing that you all do with the musicians and the dancers together is actually fairly unique, and I think there's probably some curiosity about, like, how does it all work? How does it all come together? What's the seed? How do you get from the seed to this whole thing? When do the musicians come in? All of that.
I'll just say that the founders really wanted to always honor the relationship of jazz dancers and jazz musicians working together. So I think since 1986, we have had at least one live music show in our season, sometimes even two. We are creation-based, so our season tends to be 2 new productions each year. And, I don't know what art making is not formulaic, it's process-oriented, and so we're always trying to hone our process. Rube and I have worked together on many shows. He has incredible range, and they all have different sounds and different feelings, and so it kind of goes like this. I call up Rube. I say, Rube, are you available in this time? And he says yes. And we talk about the concept, like a seed idea, like what is this show? When did this show take place? Is it a specific era in jazz? Is there a story? Is it just pure dance? We talk about those things. And then, do you want to talk about your process after that?
Sure, but I'd like to add that the scope of what you do is, we say jazz, but it's so broad.
Well, it's 100 years of music and history, man. It's a wealth. That's some rich stuff, and so many fusions. And luckily,
sometimes we do shows that are okay, it's 1920s, and sometimes it's the future, and sometimes it's funky, and sometimes it's Latin. But then there's shows that's it could be anything in one show, kind of like this. There's a broad spectrum of things that happen. So the spectrum of what DJD does and what the dancers are trained to do and excel at, and what the band does, is such a wide scope that falls under an umbrella of jazz. So it's pretty amazing. So
we talk about what we're going to do. Rube makes some demos. We agree on some things. We have it's very expensive to work with live music, so we try to be careful about what we spend our money on. We have some sessions in the beginning where we record the rough demos that Rube has made, and they become a little less rough with the band. And then we jump into the studio and we make the dances, and then the band usually shows up about 10 days before opening night. We say we try to give ourselves 12 to 16 weeks for a new creation. And in those 10 days, that's when the magic really happens. Things change, things shift. Sometimes entire pieces get made, transitions get built, and we figure out how the night's going to flow. And then we open, and then it kind of changes every night, every time we do it. Sabrina, do you want to talk about those changes a little bit?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Things shift as we go along. And when we leave the studio and we go into the theater, sometimes that's when the biggest shifts happen. The show has to flow, but it always happens. We always make it happen. Sometimes pieces are just getting completed, and it's the audience is coming, but that's the magic in it, and it always works out. So. Mm-hmm.
And I just want to highlight the thing she said about when we leave the studio and go to the theater. That's like getting on an elevator and going down a few floors to the same building. And the way that that's fairly rare to be able to have access to your theater that early and be able to do that kind of making. And so it facilitates a process that's so full and in the best way exhausted, that gets you closer to making really great art. And the thing about art making in most places is that it's generally underfunded and people don't get enough time And what they have here is they get time because of the nature of what Kathy has done with the fundraising that built the Jazz Palace that allows them to do this thing.
I mean, there's never enough time. However, it's great. And we really kind of, one of the tricky things about working with jazz musicians is that they're trained never to play the same way twice. So how do we do it, right? So we talk about form and tempo and feel, yet we try to leave room for improvisation within that, with the dancers, with the musicians. I hope, although there are rules, that within those rules they find space to be who they are in that moment on that day. You're going to say something.
Yeah, I mostly work with DJD, but I've worked with a lot of dance, and the thing that's different about DJD is they really understand jazz from a musician's perspective, like vocabulary, form, style, swing, all those things they train weekly, daily, like it's ingrained. They have these things, so that it's like working with jazz musicians. Like they understand what we're talking about, and they understand what we're doing. They understand the elements of form and improvisation and all the things that come around that. So it's very special.
Sabrina, I'm wondering, do you have a piece in Family of Jazz that is the one that you enjoy doing the most, and I'm wondering why?
Yeah, they're all amazing, and they all pull out different things, but Tara is the dance that I do with all the ladies. It's very, it's very special. Yeah, it feels really powerful. Mm-hmm.
So we have time for some questions from the audience. Has anyone? And a mic will come to you. You're probably going to say, "No, I can project." It's because we are recording and we want to get your question on the camera. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and a mic will come to you.
Do you have a school? And then if you do, what is a class like?
So we have in our palace, we are a big organization. We have the company. We have a recreational dance school that's mostly for people who just want to come and take a class. We have a professional training program that is like a 10-month half-day program for people. Most of the students in it have already done a dance degree in a university, but they want to focus on jazz. We also do a ton of outreach. I don't know if you're familiar with all the work that's been done around dance and Parkinson's. It's been in exploration and research for many years, but there's something special about Parkinson's and jazz dance. A friend of mine, a jazz friend, had a moment watching it when she was visiting the studio a while ago. But in our school, we have 1 billion classes in jazz and its family, all levels. We have jazz, and we have West African, and we have Latin styles, and we have hip hop, and we have house, and we have Bollywood, and we have yoga, and we have. We usually have, remember, we're also trying to pay our rent and support the company, right? So this is a big part of how we get our budget. Part of it comes from grants and funding. A lot of it comes from the school, and of course, fundraising and private and donors and sponsors. Sabrina teaches soca. You want to talk about your soca class?
Yeah, I teach a few Caribbean styles, soca and dancehall, and the class has been running for about, maybe I could say like 5 years now within the school. It's a popular one, and it's great. It's great to teach many different levels. And I also have a youth group that I run out of the space. So I'm so grateful to DJD to give us space to do that. The outreach that DJD does in the community is incredible. So yeah, it really is an amazing space.
We have, I think, 12 resident companies who also use our space. So we knew when we were building this space, we wanted to build it for the community. We wanted to have a hub. So lots of other dance companies and small theater groups use our theater. We have lots of people who use our space, and we just try to support as much dance as we can in Calgary.
Another question?
I know that jazz has a lot of improv built into it, just as part of the character. And I know you started to talk a little bit about how much room there is for improv in these performances, for the dancers to be able to go and play and do something, and how much they stay with the script. And the other thing is we live in the New York area, and wondering could be any possibility of coming to New York to dance there, maybe the Joyce or wherever.
I mean, so do you want to talk about improvisation within the work, or do you want me to talk about it?
Oh, well, I can say just quickly that, yeah, there's a lot of improv. That's one of the classes that we take in our schedule, so it feels really natural and rooted, and I'm glad that there's space for that. But yes, you can take that one.
It's an important part of jazz. So we practice it all the time in different ways. The founding artistic director, Vicki Adams-Willis, does teach the company like an improvisation class once a week. So they work with lots of different ideas around jazz improvisation. It's her thing that is so essential to our work, as you see, is deeply connecting to the music. So she's like, no, dig deeper, dig deeper, dig deeper. That's surface, that's not good enough. So even within the set work, there are often moments of improvisation or spirit of improvisation within the work. And we have done more open concept performance improvisations where it's like, okay, go. Or sometimes there was a show a few years ago when Vicki would randomly say words, and the dancers would have to dance those words, and the band would have to play those words. So I think there's lots of different ways in the structure of jazz that we use improvisation. It's key. And what was the other part of that?
Joyce.
Well, I mean, hey, do you work at the Joyce? Want to bring us? We have, we toured a lot in Canada for many, many years. Small town tours, national tours. We've toured a little bit internationally. And we went through a massive change in our world in building our new space. And around that time was also the first artistic leadership transition in the history of the company. I'm only the second artistic director, so I needed some time to get my shit together. And also we had to figure things out and build our building. And so now, and then COVID. And so now I feel like we're in a new world and figuring out how to navigate post-COVID touring. So this is a great start. We're so happy to be here.
I think we have time for one more.
You look like you're having so much fun. And I think you must be, but I know that it's hard work.
Yes.
So, could you talk a little about that? I mean, it just looks like so much fun.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. We're not faking it. It is real. But we train for that type of level of effort. Monday to Friday, in the morning, from 9 to 10:30, we're at the gym, we're working out, and then after that you take a class, then you take a lunch break, and then you rehearse from 1:30 to 5, and you're preparing for this. So we do feel very set up for it, but the emotion and the vibes that you're seeing, that's real, right? All of us on stage, we love the job, we love jazz, most importantly. So I'm happy that you saw that and that you felt that. Mm-hmm.
And having that live music behind you, it just it sends you, right? So gives the boost.
And yeah, from the musician's perspective, first off, after working with DJD for so long, I'm tainted. I do hundreds of gigs a year, but nothing feels like this. Having the dancers there and you just responding to them and they're responding to you. There's nothing like it.
Pretty fun.
Yeah. And if I could just say, as a musician in jazz music, there's a little bit, not just jazz music, but a lot of music, there's a little bit that has been lost of the connection between dance and music. And my background coming from a Latin background, and I grew up playing in R&B bands. There's a little bit more of a connection of dancer, musician. So doing this feels very natural, and I think it's something that needs to come back and be part of what we all do, musicians, dancers, everybody.
Well, if I could get one more round of applause for Decidedly Jazz Dance Works. Congratulations. Thank you all. Have a good night.
There is something I want to say, a message that I hope to reach people who are throwing life away. All of our lives are free.